Like many others, I cannot count how many hours I've spent watching Shrek. My brother and I used to drive our parents crazy by quoting the first two films in their entirety, regardless of whether we were watching it or not. I actually still do this on a daily basis, way more often than I should. Shrek had, and to be honest still does, have a chokehold on many of us. It truly is never ogre. However, the one Shrek topic which is stuck in my mind, my personal Roman Empire, is Little Red Riding Hood. More specifically, the unexplained Yassification of Little Red Riding Hood from Shrek 2 the film to Shrek 2 the video game. But what do I mean by this? Those of you who can't recite Shreks 1 and 2 off by heart might think, is Little Red Riding Hood even in Shrek? And let me answer it for you now. Yes. Little Red Riding Hood is sort of like the Deliveroo for the Shrekiverse. She's first seen during the honeymoon sequence in Shrek 2 when she knocks on Mr. and Mrs. Shrek's door with a picnic and screams when she sees the ogres open the door. Because despite the happy ending of Shrek 1, nobody has really learnt their lesson and everyone is still super judgy and scared of ogres. So Red screams, and by the time the Counting Crows have gotten to their last chorus, the people of the village have their pitchforks out. As you can see here by this little Red portrait, despite being dramatic, Red is currently alive. Or at least some iteration of her is. Like I said, Shrek was a global phenomenon. So why then, with such a juggernaut, does nobody else seem to notice the disconnect between Little Red Riding Hood here and here? When Red made the platform jump, she apparently drank some happily ever after potion herself and somehow went from a regular little girl to this. I remember being confused about this even as a kid. Firstly, Red is such a small character in the film. She only shows up for 2 seconds during the honeymoon scene, and she just runs away. You're telling me that this terrified side character wants to help Shrek and Co? She just ran away from them. She isn't even mentioned at all on the Wikipedia page for the game, which made me wonder, is she even in it at all? Did I dream it? Were my unrequested rants at work completely unneeded? But no, a quick look on the Shrek wiki showed me that she is in fact a playable character, who not only looks different from the film, but she also has the power to throw killer apples as a special ability. This is all over the place. She's not the evil queen. At first my memory failed me, and I thought, well, maybe this was done to appeal to girls who are playing, because there's no other female playable characters. But Fiona is right there. Not only this, but she has a third iteration in Shrek Super Slam, where she's so overpowered that she's actually banned from tournaments. Compare this to the film where she's so forgettable that one comment I saw said, "I wish she had been in the film and not just the games." Granted, in this version she does kind of look like a modified version of the Shrek 2 video game character. She has a similar outfit and is still using her exploding apples, but I think you do have to kind of work to see the resemblance. What do you think? Are there 2 or 3 versions of Red? Or maybe more? Comment below to see how far you think the deceit goes. By the time I saw even more versions of Red in Shrek Extra Large, I felt like they were doing it on purpose. Maybe that's why nobody cares, because the Little Red multiverse was so vast that it's expected. Maybe this is just the deep lore I was missing out on by not watching the Shrek films. Avid Shrek heads were just in on the secret, or perhaps they'd just become numbed to the constant changes. I decided to watch the films for myself. I thought I saw a Shrek 5 trailer, but it was actually fake and I got really confused for a second and felt super old. Watching the newer Shrek films, I had a few thoughts. The top one being that whoever decided on the score for the films was just chef's kiss. Every song is mwah, fits perfectly. Now I will say that the first time I watched Shrek the Third, I was disappointed. I didn't feel it had the same je ne sais quoi that the previous 2 films had. I am wondering though if that was maybe due to my preteen angstiness. I do still think that the later films are missing some of the charm, but compared to other sequels, they don't feel as egregious or as money-grabbing. To be honest, I think that a lot of the annoyance I had as a child was some weird, inappropriate confusion at the lack of cohesion in the Shrek universe, that Sir Justin was on a poster in Shrek 2, and then Justin Timberlake plays a character in the 3rd film. Although, like the Red Riding Hood thing, maybe just no one else cares. One other side note I had about Shrek the Third was when the high school kids are mean to Shrek. Like, he's an ogre. Haven't you heard the stories? He will literally eat the jelly from your eyes on toast. Maybe you should be nicer to him. The more I dove down this rabbit hole, the more confused I got. I felt like a fake Shrek fan. By curbing my intense Shrek fascination at Shrek 2, I had missed out on so much lore. All of a sudden, during my research, I was confronted with this. Red Riding Hood is a villain? Not just a villain, but a fallen henchman? I know that in Shrek 2 it could be argued that her making a stink during Accidentally in Love by the Counting Crows could have spurred the villagers on to run after the Shreks. But a villain? Really? What's more, how can she be a villain in Shrek the Third and siding with Charming, but she helped Shrek in Shrek 2 the video game? Not only did she look different in both iterations, but she seems to have a complete personality transplant. She seems to go from food delivery person to pickpocket at one point. On the one hand, I guess the villain and hero tropes are sometimes reversed in Shrek, and the big bad wolf is friends with Shrek, so maybe Red would be a baddie. Not in that way, weirdos, in this world, but I don't know. Something still left me feeling confused. Especially when you keep in mind some of the attention to detail in the rest of the franchise. There are repeated jokes, think the fighting Fiona scene, as well as Easter eggs like Mama Bear being in the marketplace scene and then missing in the swamp scene just to pop up later as Lord Farquaad's rug. This horrible detail shows that the creators of Shrek seem to pay attention to things like this. So why is this part so off? I wrote that last bit, then remembered that the princesses in Shrek are totally different to how they're portrayed in Shrek 2 and beyond. But in this instance, you could argue that the princesses were only background characters in Shrek, and they become characters in their own right in subsequent films, which I guess also happens to Red. I'm not sure. If you hope that this video would have a satisfying conclusion, then I don't know if I have one for you. The way I see it, there are two options. Option 1. Red is actually part of an alternate universe, similar to Shrek Forever After. Different Reds have found a way to make it into our beloved Shrek timeline. This happens sometime between Shrek 2 and Shrek 3. Badass Red enters our universe and is cool as hell. Throwing poison apples, better fashion sense, sassier attitude, and as we all know by her overpowered status and subsequent ban in competition in Shrek Super Slam, she's basically a superhero. When OG Red sees this, she becomes depressed. We see her in the Poison Apple pub, all sad and seemingly on Charming's side, because she's unhappy with the fact that an alternate version of her has entered the world and basically is redding better than she is. As this Red becomes as bitter as one of those shrivelled up apples, new Red is smashing it out of the park. She's cool, she's overpowered, she's voiced by Tara Strong, she has it all. Or option number 2. They just wanted another female character to be playable in Shrek 2 the video game because there's pretty few women in the franchise up until that point. They yassified her because, similar to the princesses, she was originally meant to be a background character and therefore didn't need to have the same appeal. This is actually something we see a lot, and another thing I used to get really annoyed at as a child in Disney toys. So a Disney princess would have quite a plain dress sometimes in the film, and then when you went to buy the toy or the outfit, it would be much more embellished, and I just wanted it to look the same, and I used to get really frustrated. Back to Shrek, I actually noticed that this happened quite a lot in the Shrek films. In Shrek 3, for example, Rumpelstiltskin looks very different to how he does in the 4th film. It was pretty confusing, to be honest, and kind of made the whole video a bit pointless. Or does it prove the multiverse theory? Shrek 5 into the Shrekiverse when? Also, as a side note, people cared a lot more about the Rumpelstiltskin thing than about Red Riding Hood. Maybe if I can find Anarchy Mango 115 and the rest of the gang, they'll be able to justify my argument. Obi actually says that the 4th film doesn't fit within the universe. They're definitely taking the red pill, and I'm on their side. Back to the theory. Once she was a playable character, they gave her a makeover, probably to make her more appealing to play, and it seemed to work. I mean, I remember wanting to play as her every time I got to go around my friend's house to play their PS2. And I imagine a lot of other kids did too, because she was kept around in the newer Shrek games, so they must have done something right. So that's my rant. If you stuck around for this long, then thanks for listening. This topic has been on my mind for years more than it should have been, and I just wanted to see if anyone else out there had any thoughts or cared about it. So please do leave a comment if you have anything to add to the conversation, and come back soon.